The Cornelius, Oregon Church of Christ presents a survey of the book of Numbers, tracing Israel's journey from the second year after Egypt toward the threshold of the Promised Land. It frames Numbers as a narrative of covenant, worship, leadership, and recurrent failure, showing how liturgical law, priestly duties, and communal discipline shape Israel's identity while revealing moral and spiritual lapses that delay the fulfillment of God's promises. Each lesson combines historical context, close reading, and practical reflection. The curriculum covers the establishment of the Jewish religion and political structures as God outlined it. The class material can be downloaded from the Cornelius Church of Christ website or using the QR code in this introduction.
us to see the lessons that you have taught us and recording these things for us. Help us to be diligent students of your word, to make application of it in our lives. We pray that you'll help us to be proper examples in the world, spread your message. Pray all these things through Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Michael. So what's the value of the book of Numbers to a Christian of the 21st century? And the answer is 1 Corinthians chapter 10 wants us to know that the things that the Israelites go through in the book of Numbers are really critically relevant to us, that they have an important point to us. Now, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul points out five things that the Israelites did wrong. One of those things is actually not in the book of Numbers, the idolater part, although they did commit idolatry in the book of Numbers. He's referencing an event that occurred back in Exodus, but of the others, they're all things that we're walking through in the book of Numbers, and two of them are tonight. Whenever they lusted after evil things, and whenever they complained, the reference that Paul makes in both of those events are things that we're looking at in chapter 11 and chapter 12. Now, complain, you know already. You don't have to know much about the Old Testament or much about the Israelites. This is a squeaky wheel kind of thing. This is something that's going to go on and on and on until ultimately the Israelites are going to lose everything. They're going to lose everything. It's kind of interesting, by the way, that even in this conversation here, Paul doesn't actually mention the whole rebellion against God where they tried to go back to Egypt and just how furious God was over that. He's just mentioning the things that they were doing that was the constant irritants before God. And so we're going to look at two of these things tonight. I want you to have your Bibles out, and of course, for the sake of time, my hope is you had a chance already to read chapter 11 and chapter 12, but we will be touching in these a couple of times, just to, especially as we start off here, just to kind of get ourselves set up, but to give us a time frame. And Moses isn't exactly a chronological writer. Sometimes Moses jumps around, but trying to pin a time period on this, I think the Numbers chapter 10 is giving us an idea of where we're starting at, and that this is the 20th day of the second month, the second year, when they launch out. Then it seems like the events that start off here in chapter 11 are immediately after this. So put yourself in the Israelite mood for just a moment. You left Egypt just over a year ago. You left Egypt. You've been in the wilderness now for a while. For a year now. What have you been eating? Manna, yeah. This comes up a couple of times. Manna, quail, that was back in Exodus. We'll see it again, the story retold here again in Numbers chapter 11. But the idea is God has been providing for you. And I've always said that manna must have been an extraordinary thing at first. That you just walk outside, and there's your food. And again, what's remarkable is there's probably not been a society until the last 70 or 80 years that you could eat as much as you want. Probably a lot of you had parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents who tell stories about what it was like during the Great Depression or times like that, and how it was the case that maybe just some nights you didn't eat, you know, and that was a common thing. And certainly eating as much as you want was unknown. The Israelites are doing something that probably nobody had done in history, and probably nobody would do after that. They're just eating as much as they want. They have an all-you-can-eat buffet outside the front door. And of course, as I said, at first this must be marvelous. I mean, they're excited. But what's about to happen tonight? What's going to go on? They're going to start to complain about it because they're getting tired. They're getting tired of it. Now, I'll pause for a second and say there's a lot of references that say the Israelites were still trading with other people, and they were still, so it's not as though they never ate anything else. You know, I think to some degree you might say, oh, it might be kind of tough to eat one thing every day. That's probably not exactly how it is, that manna becomes the vast majority of their staple. Not unusual for ancient cultures, by the way, that you would just have one kind of bread that was 90% of your meal. Manna seems to be that case. Tacho.
Yeah, it seems like it went the wrong way.
Well, why did they go a different route? They could have gone straight up, but the Bible tells us why they didn't. That's a good question. Why did the Israelites not go straight, George? No. Yeah, against who? You remember? Yeah. So they have the Amalekites and the Philistines. And the Philistines are right on the way. The Philistines are pretty tough guys, by the way. The Philistines actually recently, in ancient history, had recently overcome the Egyptians. They're called the Sea Peoples. They had overcome them. The Philistines seem to have like the stealth fighter jets of the day, which in that day is actually steel. They had the iron weapons and such, so they were really tough people. And God says, I don't want them to go that way because they'll get discouraged. Well, it didn't take a lot to discourage them, but the Philistines were a lot worse of an enemy than anybody else would be. So that's why God says, we're not going to go that way. We're going to go under. We're going to go the southern route instead. So they've been camping for a year. Now they're moving. And of course, your thought is, hey, we're getting ready to go into the promised land. Chapter 11, when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. For the Lord heard it. His anger was aroused. The fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some of them. On the outskirts of the camp. The people cried out to Moses. When Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. So he called the name of the place to bear because of the fire of the Lord that had broken out among them. Kind of interesting. We don't get a statement about what this complaint is about. Now, you know it's going to be Manna here in just a few moments, but right now, we don't know what is going on here. Kind of odd that the Bible doesn't tell us. So anybody ever thought about that? Anybody say, well, to me it seems like maybe even taking a step back here and saying if they've been camped for a year and now they start moving, maybe that's the complaint. I don't know. Anybody ever thought about that, George? I'm not, but please do. Yeah.
Because they go back and explain a lot of things that people say.
Yeah. Very interesting enough that there is this explanation. I was thinking also of Deuteronomy where Moses has outlined this and he tells this event. He just talks about God's anger here. But it is interesting that we have these statements later in the scriptures that tell us, even in 1 Corinthians 10, we have these additional information tidbits that kind of give us that. So, interesting point.
They had a lot of gold. And they went to spend it.
That could be it. That's every kid's allowance bill. It's like you get $5. You want to go spend it? That's an interesting point. Anybody else have a thought? Brian? Yeah. Very interesting point. Because what's the next thing? What goes on next? Verse 4. What is the switch over to here? What do they start complaining about? Yeah, so verse 4. So the first one is just this. They start complaining. We're not specifying what's going on. God's angry. This fire comes from God and consumes a bunch of them. It's very brief. It just sets us up to say that this is, and Paul references it in 1 Corinthians, to say this is God being angry over the simple idea that you're just complaining. We're going to talk a lot about complaining tonight because I think we are often underwhelmed by the seriousness of complaining. Now, Ryan says, hey, isn't it interesting that they were sacrificing meat all the time? And have you guys ever driven down the place over here on 10, the carniceria, and you can smell them doing the carne asada and stuff? Man, that smells good. And you wonder about what sacrifices might have been like, smelling that. And as I said, carefully, it's not so they never had it. But there's something interesting said here in this second complaint. So verse 4 says, now the mixed multitude who are among them yielded to intense craving. Now that sentence alone is a mystery. I love mysteries like this where you have a little sentence that has a lot of things going on and they're not exactly easily figured out. I'll come back to that in just a second. The mixed multitude had this yield to intense craving. So the children of Israel wept. Again it said, who will give us meat to eat? We remember the we freely ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, garlics. Now our whole being is dried up. There is nothing at all except this manna before our eyes. Okay. What a complaint. I tell you what, if you want to learn how to complain, the Israelites are the people that tell you how to complain, can really make it sound bad. Let's talk about verse 4. Mixed multitude. You have some different words there. Anybody else have another term there? What do you got, Tacho?
Did they have a lot of foreigners with them? Did they have other people?
All right, so Tacho's actually onto something here. Mixed multitude. Your Bible probably has a footnote, in fact, taking you back to the book of Exodus, where it says that in Exodus, when the Israelites left, they brought with them, the same term is used, a mixed multitude. Anybody have a different word? Rabble, yeah. I saw one standard rabble, New American Standard rabble. Riprap, I saw one Bible translation say. I'm not sure how well that fits, but there's a lot of debate about what this term means. Other than it does imply negative. It does say there's just a bunch of no goods. But it doesn't really make sense. And so a lot of times what people think is that when the Israelites left, there were people that went with them. There's a lot of speculation that they might be. Some said, well, maybe they're like Egyptians. Israelites won. We want to go with them. Maybe there are people that were like half Egyptian, half Israelite. That's a pretty popular idea as well. I kind of think of it like this. Whenever I see somebody is starting a new church or something, and I was talking to some people recently that they started a new work in their area, and everybody's really excited. They draw in a lot of people from other congregations that are just the unhappy type. So in other words, you have a lot of people that say, hey, it's important. Then you have the people that say, I just don't like anybody else. You kind of get that small bit of people like that. And I kind of feel like maybe that's a little bit of what we're talking about here. It's not clear. But we have a lot of things that we can think about. Gregor?
Human nature, the way they set up the camps was the camps tended to be in ring, and you got to figure that the people on the outskirts, they were sort of the ones that were only half-hearted into this anyway. They could have been interbreeding with the people around them outside the fellowship. To me, it just that's what it implies, is that it's the folks on the rim, the folks that are never really part of the program to be in.
It's interesting. Verse 1 says that's where the fire consumed everybody was in the outskirts. And you do think of the idea that on the outskirts of town tend to be like your people that don't conform to the standards of being in town. So I often wonder if the outskirts, because the Israelites were supposed to live in very ordered and rigid places. So maybe the people on the outskirts that are consumed in verse 1 are people that said we just don't get along with anyone.
And also, we talked about the way their camp was laid out, where I think the tabernacles have built the camp.
Yeah.
And it might be that the people who are the least interested in being close to the tabernacle or camp.
Gonna move the furthest away.
Like the people who sit at the front.
Oh wow, that's tough. That's tough. Greg, you gonna let him get away with that? He just said that the guys that sit the furthest away from the preacher like that. Come tear him up after service. Yeah, so it's kind of. So the whole point is this. It is a good point to say. It is a good point to say. Maybe they are the ones that want to be as far away from the worship of God as possible. That really could be. These are all great points. Now, that's interesting. That you had these other groups there. But what is more interesting to me is that this terminology of intense craving is so unusual. Like I said, I wouldn't have any guess at it, except in 1 Corinthians, when Paul talks about it. Paul says it was a sinful thing that they wanted. So let's put it together real quick. They're craving something. They say, "Give us meat." And whatever this is sinful. What's a good guess? What's a good guess what they want? Tacho?
Was there like sexual stuff?
Well, there will be later, but it's not mentioned
I
here.
have a question.
Yeah.
So we were talking about they all eat manna, but are the Levites not eating meat, or are they given some sacrifice?
So the Levites are by law allowed to partake of the sacrifice after the fat has been burned off. They're not allowed to eat the fat. But once the fat has burned off, they are allowed to eat of the meat. So the Levites might be eating meat. I want to pause for a second and say that the issue with quail, though it comes up here, has probably already come up before. So there's already, the quail has been here before. This is just that Moses is not a chronological writer. So this is a little confusing. We feel like we're reading something confusing. Grant? All right. So what I think we're almost certainly talking about is this. Imagine you just joined the church, or I'll say a club or something, but that's not a strong enough point. And you get told, hey, glad to have you here. By the way, you never have bacon again. How do you feel about that? You never have a ham. Yeah. Never have a ham. Yeah. There goes out. I get it. All right. Right. And there is a sense where there might be a place. There might be a place. By the way, it's been around even before. Go back to Noah. There's a reference to it. But it hasn't been a sin. It hasn't been a sin yet. And so it's very possible that this outside group is saying, can eat bacon. Can eat, by the way, bacon's probably the only thing on the list that appeals to me. Other things like shellfish. Eel. They mentioned fish. Somebody will say flesh. The word is probably the best. Looking at different commentators, I think maybe it's just about the idea of fish. And it also makes sense. What's the one thing you don't get in New Mexico? I grew up in New Mexico. Unless it's Long John Silver, you don't go to fish, right? So that makes sense. That's maybe some of their conversation.
I think a lot of times we go to here and point out Israel seems to have a real bad memory of what actually is going on. Yeah. There's something to be said that going from Egypt to the wilderness, you might not find a bigger contrast of places and times of how fertile and lush the Nile River area was compared to the desert out of the wilderness.
It's a great point, especially since the Israelites, a lot of them lived in the Nile Delta Ocean, and that area is super fertile.
I mean, you said earlier, ancient times ever had all you can eat, but that was probably the closest you got.
Yeah. It was a really lush place, and of course, what they're thinking is all the things that they can eat there that came out of that.
Things saying here too. Dates, cucumbers, melons. So it might not be so much that they're just craving this stuff.
Right.
They don't want
Right. And it's kind of interesting to say. I think for a lot of us, when we lived in New Mexico, there's a restaurant there called Whataburger. We never ate at Whataburger. We left New Mexico, and that's all I ever wanted. Right? I don't know if you ever have moments like that, but that's every time Wendy and I are back in that area. We never ate at Whataburger, but we think, that's what we're going to have. And I think there's an element, once it's denied to you, it's all you can think about. And so it's kind of interesting to say, the Israelites are probably, we're leaving slavery, it's great, and we don't remember slavery, we just remember garlic and cucumbers. All this being said, here is this complaint, and it's very interesting to me how Moses takes this. Ultimately, this verse 6, we're eating up with manna. We're just sick of manna. Been eating it for a year now. He gives you a little kind of verse 7 and 8, 9. Gives you a little bit of tell about manna. I just think it's really interesting because it is something that we cannot conceive of. It was a genuinely supernatural food. Moses in verse 10 hears the people weeping. God is angry. And Moses is upset. And how does Moses respond to this? How does Moses go? This is one of several times when Moses says what? George? He says, this is too much. And it's kind of interesting to be around people that complain. Anybody ever worked with somebody that complains all the time? Yeah. Like I say, anybody don't look at anybody ever married to somebody who complains all the time? Anybody, you spend time with people that complain all the time. And what's that like? It's awful. Yeah. You do. It's complaining is contagious. The Israelites are probably the number one example of that in history as well as the Bible. So it makes a lot of sense. That here is this bitter complaint, and Moses says, "I just can't do this. God, I cannot do this. Here I am, 81 years old. I'd rather be what? What does he say he'd rather be?
What does he say he'd rather be?
I would rather be
I
dead.
would rather be dead.
Sometimes guys
You
are
know,
a little
sometimes
bit
guys are a little
melodramatic,
bit melodramatic.
but Moses has said,
Moses has said,
about the 79th Psalm, Moses has written to us and said, man, three score, 10, maybe four score at the best, and then it's over. Moses is a guy that says, how am I going to do all this? I didn't exactly want this job. He may not be melodramatic. I just really would rather be dead than have to deal with this complaint. Why have you done this? It's too much for me. Verse 15. Please kill me. Please kill me. Give it a little extra credit. What other prophets said I wish he was dead? Elijah said, I'm no better than my fathers. I might as well be dead. What other prophet? Jonah sat under the plant. When the plant died, I wish I was dead. I want to say Jeremiah too, but now I can't remember for sure. But the idea is, it's not unusual. That we just sometimes say, like I said again, I think Jonah was melodramatic. But I think that the rest of these guys really had a moment where they just were, I just don't want to live anymore. And I get Moses, to say when you're responsible, and there's just this bitter complaining. And you've done everything you can to make everything good. Again, there's food every day. Moses saying, I wish I was dead. It resonates, it's profound. And like I said, here is God. And God is what? God's attitude is what about this? Yeah, the great anger. The anger of the Lord was greatly aroused. I like to make the point to say, God wasn't just angry. God was furious. We're going to come back to this because it's a real big deal. This is a real big point. Lamar, did your hand go up or you just moved?
Just a thought. As we look at this, where Moses says, "Just kill me." The thing about the Old Testament, they had no hope of heaven.
They didn't. That's right.
New Testament we do. And about Paul, when Paul says, "I'm torn between staying and going." It's interesting here. Moses rather said, "Just kill me." No hope of what? No hope of
right. So that's pretty dramatic. That's a pretty dramatic point to say that he's not even thinking of it like Paul would say. I'm ready to go. He just says, I just cannot see. Of course, Moses, by the way, got 4 more years of this. I just can't imagine at this point that conversation hasn't come around. When it does, can you imagine, George? Yeah, right. Yeah. And again, what is complaining? Contagious. So one of the big things that seems to go on is when a few start, everybody picks up and starts complaining. Because like I said, it just wrecks everybody's mood. Complaining. I'll come back to it. We're gonna hit that really hard in a moment. So God's response is when you read this account, what was your natural mind? What event did your mind naturally go to? When you read about God, God said we're going to get 70 people. We're going to do something special. And God took a portion from Moses and put it on them. What did it make you think of? What event in the New Testament did it remind you of? Day of Pentecost. Day of Pentecost. Yeah. The 70 people. Day of Pentecost. Where all of a sudden the Spirit of God sent from whom? In the New Testament? From Jesus. Goes out and comes upon the apostles. Now here it's not God. Oddly enough, it's the Spirit of Moses. Now, it's probably the Spirit of God, but it's the Spirit of God from Moses. There is a huge parallel in the Bible between Moses and Jesus. They're both the mediators of covenants. Just catch the sense that here in this strong parallel event, here is Moses and the portion of the Spirit is being taken out. In the New Testament, how long did that inspiration last? But in the New Testament, Acts chapter 2, how long did that inspiration last? Until they were dead. And here's what's ironic. They all wrote it down. So it's actually still going on. Because what they gave us is still inspired by the Holy Spirit. How long did it last for Moses' time? No, Moses' time. Just one day.
Just one day.
So it's just that
Yeah,
one
so
day.
it's just
Now,
that
what's
one day.
interesting
Now, what's
is,
interesting
I think that's a great.
Moses,
Jesus is better than Moses.
Jesus is better than Moses.
Because when this
Because
parallel
when this
event
parallel
happens in
event happens in the New Testament,
death
it's
of the
still the
apostles,
death of the
or we could say
apostles,
it's even still going
it's
on.
even still going on.
Whereas
in
Moses' day was one
was
day
one
that
day
this event
that
happens.
this
Now this event,
happens.
like
Now,
I
this
said,
event,
it's
like I
really
said,
remarkable.
it's really remarkable.
When God, does all of this,
does all
he
of
takes the
this,
Spirit.
he
Verse
takes the
24,
Spirit, verse
kind of
24,
jump around because
kind of
God's going to say in the midst of this, I'm going to send you me. This is probably one of the most parent kind of things that gets said in the Bible. I shouldn't make a joke of it. But verse 20,
but verse 20,
I'm going to give you so much meat.
What?
It's going to come out your nose.
It's going to come out your nose.
I just thought it's interesting.
I just thought it's interesting. God says it that way.
Again, that's because you have despised the Lord. That's what complaining is. It is to despise God. To despise God. I'm asking a question a minute. Can you get to heaven if you're a complainer? And I'll tell you what, if you remember what God calls it, God says it is despising me. You ask that question this way. You get to heaven if you despise God. I think all of us shake our head no. That's complaining, George.
God thinks about what they're doing. He gets angrier.
Yeah.
It's interesting that this kind of snowball. Now, George, I don't know if it's because the people are getting worse. Or if, like you said, it's almost as though God is building this case to say, here's what they're really doing. And what they're really doing is, this level of God getting angrier until he then strikes down. I got to find my place. He's going to strike them down. Verse 33 with a great plague. That's how this all culminates. Even though in the midst of this, he does this incredible moment of prophecy. He's going to culminate this by striking people down. Striking people down dead. Culmination of the New Testament time period. When did God strike? When did God strike? When did God strike the New Testament down? A bunch of people dead. We're not receiving it. It kind of is the end of the New Testament prophetic time period. So maybe I don't know around 70. Yeah. God destroyed Israel. Destroyed Jerusalem. I don't know. It's kind of similar. This chapter is to that whole story of how that played out. Go ahead, Teresa.
Complaining is showing such a huge lack of gratitude.
Yes. I think, Teresa, we're going to come back and say that fundamentally, that the complaining is the same thing as being ungrateful. In that sense, that there's that while they may not be manifesting themselves the same way, that they're truly the same idea. That this lack of gratitude is where complaining comes from. And we often say that the single solution to complaining is to find things to be grateful for. We even sing songs that are good reminders for us as well. By the way, two men in the camp, verse 26 says there were two people that didn't come out, and the Spirit of Moses goes on them too, and they start prophesying. Here's what Joshua said. So we'll stop. You need to stop this. This is kind of a mystery. Because Moses is really upset about this. Verse 28, stop these guys. And Moses says, "Oh, are you zealous for my sake?" He says, "I wish every person here was a prophet of God." Kind of again, I think there's something symbolic in that statement too. It wasn't a bad thing. I often wonder why Joshua was upset. What might provoke Joshua to say, hey, they didn't, maybe something similar to the apostles. They said, hey, we saw people that aren't with us normally, and they were, doing miracles in your name. Yes, he was. Yeah. And he's just, the thing is that Joshua loved Moses. I think is one of the things that I love about Joshua. That he loved Moses.
I think one of the things that we see in a lot of places in the Bible, I think we kind of see it ruin with the Pharisees and even some other people, is that sometimes when people are really interested in following God's law, they kind of get too excited about it and want to add stricter
Interesting point.
maybe God was looking out, well, these guys didn't come to the tent, and now they're doing this anyway. They didn't do what they were supposed to.
Yeah.
Even though that wasn't, the whole thing of what God wanted, adding on
A profoundly important thing we ought to consider too, and certainly I think I can easily slip into that kind of mindset. Well, I like that point. Great.
With them prophesying, God's approved for He's anointing them for a special purpose. Would this correlate with my baptism, anointed by God after you're baptized, forgiveness of sins, anointing you for that special purpose as a child of God? Would that be the same as? I guess what I'm thinking is that even though the two guys were not in the camp, God pointed them, anointed them anyhow. Everybody knew it. So they knew who was for God and had agreed with him and who wasn't.
So, Greg, are you kind of thinking that maybe John, and what's interesting is that it says these guys are, go back to Gregor's comment about the outskirts, and maybe the outskirts people are just presumed to be bad. Maybe these guys are outskirts people. Well, they're outskirts people. Are you kind of seeing this as an idea that it was God chose the people that were with him, and maybe Joshua is making more. I don't know if that's really where you're going. Tell me the look on your face. Tell me the look on your face.
I think the prophesied out in the camp, and even after people that had gathered around Moses, they went back out into the camp and were doing what they're supposed to, or setting up that society or that hierarchy to help Moses out. And even though these two weren't in, obviously they were called.
Yeah, they're clearly God gave them this anointing.
Right. But yet they're outside the camp.
Yeah.
It's almost like Gentiles.
Yeah, nice.
Even though these few, not in with and still selected because they were.
I like that, Greg. Even Paul and Barnabas might be kind of the two that were outside of the rest. That when they got selected, it was kind of an selection choice. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. I like that idea. Teresa, last comment. I'm going to make that the last comment. Yeah, they're doing, if they're not against us, they're with us kind of language. I do think of this. I want to move forward just so we can kind of hit this really quick. I'm going to talk us out of time again. Larry's going to, make me stick. He needs me to stick with it, right? We finished this chapter with God bringing in the quail, and as I said, this might be the same that God had brought in the quail earlier, or it might be that this is something special, and there does seem to be something special in verse 19 that this might have been a much more significant than it had been before. God brings in the quail, but then, right as they're eating it, it says while it's still in their mouth, God hits them with a plague and kills with a very great plague. So very interesting how those two things are coinciding. God wants it to be seen, his wrath. Which brings us to our first question. Here's two times now God's wrath has exploded in this chapter. What are the two ways? Way number one, fire. Way number two, plague. Very interesting. Just kind of keep that in mind. Because you're gonna, one of the things that always strikes me in the book of Numbers is how many times do these people get in trouble with God? And God not destroy them. Honestly. Twice now they've seen the wrath of God, and you would think this. Whenever the Israelites in chapter 11 and verse 6 are talking about our whole being is dried up, there's nothing except manna before our eyes. What are they kind of talking about manna? Childishly. I like that. That's really good. Childishly. What else?
They were very unthankful and ungrateful.
Very ungrateful. Yeah, very ungrateful. And again, I think being ungrateful is a big idea here. Anyone else have a?
My grandfather mentioned Psalm 78 before, which talks about this quite a bit, and there it talks about they forgot what God had done for them.
Yeah.
Didn't remember anything about God.
Yeah. Which is how long has it been since they were delivered? A year now. Yeah. So interesting enough, 1 year later, and they seem to do this. Kind of talked about this one already, so I'm going to pass this question out about why Moses, because this is the question that I can spend the rest of the night talking about, just talking about nothing but. Why is this such a big deal? Why is grumbling so serious a thing? Now, Teresa already kind of threw a thought out at it. She said, well, for one thing, it's being ungrateful. Tacho? It spreads. Okay, Tacho says something really important about complaining. It's definitely exceptionally contagious. It makes COVID look like you couldn't catch it. Grumbling and complaining is huge.
When I think about grumbling and complaining, it's putting us on his level.
I like that. Al. That's actually really good comment. To say that complaining is as though I have the right to make it. That's neat because that's what God says to Job. God says to Job, you don't have the right to complain because you're not me. And you don't know what I know. That's a really neat comment.
Similar to that, it also says that I don't believe God is going to help me.
All right. I don't believe in God is definitely one of the kings of our complaining. We want to kind of put in there that it is a strength. And the Bible actually says later, I can't remember where it was later, he'll say, if they don't believe it. I've got Teresa and then George.
Because they're not praying to God and asking what they need.
Yeah. God said later, the reason I gave you manna is so that you would learn that you don't live by bread alone, but by every word of God. I think Jesus would say later. George, yeah, they don't believe. Yes, very good.
I see complaining as a form of selfishness.
Ooh, nice.
You think you deserve something different than what you get.
So, you know what we like to say about selfishness? What is selfishness? I'll pay for it later. You don't know. About the root of all sin. We typically say that selfishness is the root of all sin, so complaining could be an ultimate manifestation. So, all these comments.
Yeah, for us today, it's our salvation. God's already given His Son. He's already given us the plan. He's already prepared heaven. And we forget it so much.
Yeah. So let's make an application. And I know I'm going to talk mess up Miriam, and it's not fair to her. Give me the big four things. Give me the big three things we complain about. That you've got to walk away tonight saying, I'm scared now. What do we complain about? Brethren, the church. Number one, I saw a great article on this. We complain about our brethren and the church all the time. Just how angry God must get when we do that. Frightens me. Teresa, what else? The circumstances of our life, which especially whenever we're going through a tough time, what are we telling God when we complain? We don't trust that God will deliver us. That really makes God angry. What's one more? You know, a lot of times it's the good things we have that we complain the most about. The nice things that we have, the blessings that we have. And that's what manna was. It was a blessing. And they just couldn't be happy. They couldn't find the thing that to say, hey, this is really much better than what it was before. So a lot of things we can talk about. We're going to move on because we owe it to Miriam. We owe it to Miriam because Miriam is one of the leaders of Israel. She's about to get dinged. Book of Micah makes the point to say that when God led the Israelites out of Egypt, here's the neat statement that says, God says, I gave Moses, Aaron, and Miriam is somebody we don't always think about. Moses and Aaron. But it's Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. right?
Miriam is the one that's a
prophetess. Miriam is the one who gives us the song of Miriam.
After the Egyptians are cast in the sea, Miriam is a leader of Israel. She's called one of the big three. And Miriam has a complaint against Moses. Can you tell me what it is in a nutshell real quick? What's the complaint against Moses? Debbie?
Basically, she felt like she and Aaron didn't have the same status.
Very interesting, because that's how God takes it in verse 6. Whenever he says, this is the idea he goes on to verse 2, they'll say, God doesn't just talk to Moses, he talks to Miriam and Aaron too, right, Aaron? By the way, who's the oldest of the three? Miriam. Who's the youngest? Little brother. I was a little brother. Little brother. He just thinks he knows everything. What spurred this? What provoked this, Tacho? Well, it could be, but we're actually told in verse 1 that this starts over a problem with Moses' wife. He has married an Ethiopian or a Cushite woman. A woman, like I said, think of a lot of different things here. Maybe dark complected, not an Israelite, however you want to consider this. Verse 3 is a really good verse. Man Moses more humble. Keep that in mind. That's a test question throughout the New Testament about humility. Who wrote Numbers 12:3? So I'll let you figure that one out on your own. That's kind of an interesting point to think about. God's response to this complaint is that God says, I want you guys to listen. So he calls them out, and he says, I talked to Moses for a reason. This is verse 6, 7, and 8. Anger of the Lord is aroused, and he strikes Miriam with leprosy. And so then, of course, they go forward, and Aaron begs Moses, verse 11 and 12, do something about this, stop this, Moses. Moses, verse 13, prays to God, and God says, well, I'll tell you what, she's insulted, if she'd insulted her father, you wouldn't want it to go this easy, so at least act like I'm worth that, because I've been insulted here. And so for 7 days, she's shut out of the camp as a leper, and then she's allowed back in. So let's just talk about this for a couple of minutes, and then our time is up. Go ahead, Greg.
Sorry, I have a question. When it talks about Moses being married, his first wife is
so that's always the question. And I wrote in the notes, if you see, my thinking is that I just forgot her name. Zipporah is probably dead. She hasn't been mentioned since for a while. And so I'm wondering if perhaps she's dead. Jordan. That's a tough one, because especially since Moses isn't chronological. This could be not after the first year. This could be something later.
Couldn't they have multiple wives?
And it's a question about possibly having multiple wives, because it was something that the law will permit. The law of Moses will permit. So the next question is a second wife in addition to the first wife. It's possible. Sure. Possible.
I was actually going to ask, because I was thinking of that, Jesus talks about Moses let the Israelites, or is it divorce?
Divorce. He permitted divorce. But I'll be honest, I think Jesus would have said the same thing, because Jesus then says, my law is one man, one woman for life. I think Jesus is also criticizing by necessary inference. Moses is permitting more than one.
That kind of makes it sound like Moses was more straightforward, righteous.
Right. My opinion. We're gonna mix it. My opinion's not better than anyone else's. My opinion is this is a new one. Zipporah was Midianite, and there's not many times where Midianites and Cushites are described the same way. So I think this is a new wife. I don't think this is Zipporah, and I also don't think that Zipporah is with us anymore. She's not mentioned. And that's just a lot of speculation. But the answer is I don't know for sure. But here's a question. Is Moses breaking the law? He's married to a Cushite? What do we think? Well, wait a second. Isn't there remember Ezra and Nehemiah where they had to divorce all these wives because they married foreign women? What's the rule?
Cushite wasn't a king.
All right. So number one, Deuteronomy 7, 1 through 3. When God forbid that, Stephen's right. It specifically said not to marry the tribes of the kingdom. So number one, he says not to marry the tribes of the kingdom. There's a couple more answers you might think about. That's a good one. That's probably the best one.
Well, if Moses is breaking the law, it doesn't seem like God would take his side.
Yeah, so some people point out and say that maybe there's several times where this happened. Rahab, who was a Canaanite, that it does seem that whenever the person converted, whenever the person was a believer in God, that they got a pass. That it's almost as though what God is really saying is, I don't want people that believe in foreign gods to do this, and God is going to criticize Solomon for marrying Egyptians, not on the list, and that didn't believe. So that's the second point. One more point you might think about. The law is in Deuteronomy 7, which is when time-wise. Or Teresa, Jeff, what are you going to say?
Was he married to her before or after that?
Deuteronomy 7 is still 40 years in the future. So at this point, there actually hasn't been a law about marriage. So there is a double law. So he hasn't actually broken the law. Since there hasn't been a law established yet. So any of those three things are a good answer to this. Let me just grab the size one. We're out of time. Why Miriam and not Aaron, you think? What do you think went on here? Why do you think Miriam was struck but Aaron wasn't? Yeah, so maybe number one, this was Miriam coercing Aaron to him. Maybe that's what she is the talker here in this conversation. What else might it be? What was Aaron's job? High priest. What could he do if he has leprosy? It could be the high priest. So it might have something to do with that as well. At our time. So Ryan, go ahead and hit the buzzer, and we'll stop here. Thank you all. Some great thoughts and comments. I really appreciated this evening. Talking about some of my favorite stuff. If you didn't get enough comments about complaining, I'm going to give you a spoiler.